Oliver and Barbara Johnson, aged 65 and 61 respectively, were enjoying a quiet evening at home when Barbara, speaking in a light, almost playful tone, asked an unexpected question. "What would you think if I had an affair?" Without skipping a beat, Oliver answered, "I wouldn't be okay with that." For most couples, such a question would have come out of nowhere. But after 43 years of marriage, the Johnsons were used to diving into conversations others might find strange. They often explored topics that would surprise most married couples. Barbara, still graceful and turning heads in her early 60s, was a college professor. She specialized in philosophy but was particularly known for her popular course on human sexuality, which filled every semester with eager students. Over the years, Oliver and Barbara had built a relationship with remarkable openness, especially when it came to discussing intimacy, fantasies, and personal desires. Their candid approach was rare, and perhaps even enviable. Still, despite that history, her question gave Oliver pause. Barbara added, "What if it were someone like Ben Affleck? I mean, it's a celebrity, after all." By this point in their marriage, Oliver had learned to expect the unexpected. He played along with a chuckle. "Well, if it's Ben Affleck, I suppose I could live with it." Clapping her hands with excitement, Barbara exclaimed, "Wonderful!" That reaction made Oliver raise an eyebrow. "Wait, what?" he asked, a touch of worry in his voice. Barbara laughed gently. "Relax, darling. I've never met Ben Affleck. I wouldn't even know how to begin. But it leads to a more serious question." Oliver's shoulders tensed. He sensed they were headed into deeper, possibly uncomfortable territory. "If I did actually sleep with Ben Affleck," she continued, "how do you think you'd feel? Let's be real. People always joke about celebrities being an exception, but I want to hear your honest reaction." At first, Oliver thought she might be using the scenario for classroom material. That helped him settle a bit. "Truthfully, Barbara, I'd have to think about it," he admitted. "I don't know exactly how I'd feel." Barbara smiled warmly and stood up. "All right, love, take your time. I'll make some coffee." Oliver knew that was her subtle way of saying, "I expect a thoughtful answer." So, despite his internal discomfort, he started thinking about it seriously. Of course, if she actually slept with Ben Affleck, the betrayal would hurt. He'd be angry. But would a hypothetical celebrity encounter really be enough to end their decades-long marriage? Barbara had been nothing but a loyal, loving wife and an incredible mother. That mattered. When she returned with the coffee, she wore that familiar teacher expression, patient, composed, and clearly ready for his answer. "Barbara," he began, "if something like that happened and you kept it from me, I'd feel deeply hurt. Even if I knew beforehand, it would still wound me." She nodded thoughtfully. "I understand. But would it be enough to break us?" He paused, thinking carefully. "No," he said finally, "it wouldn't destroy us, but it would cause real pain." Barbara's posture shifted slightly. Oliver could tell she wasn't done. "And what if it wasn't Ben Affleck?" she asked softly. "But Charlie Miller, you know, from my department." Before he could stop himself, Oliver cracked a joke. "Then I'd shoot both of you and serve the rest of my life in prison with a smile." Most people might have expected Barbara to recoil a line like that, but Oliver knew her well. She barely flinched. "I get it," she said calmly. "But don't worry. I won't be doing anything with Charlie that I wouldn't do with Ben." Now, you might be thinking, Oliver's in trouble. But trust me, he wasn't. They'd been through too much together. Barbara, if anything, was an expert at navigating the messy landscape of marriage. "It's really not as complicated as people make it out to be," she said, picking up the conversation. "Sure, there are some fundamentals, but when it comes down to it, Ben Affleck, I could probably offer you a level of connection most women never get to experience. Then again, if the rumors are true, maybe a lot already have." Barbara rested her chin on her palm, watching Oliver closely. "But Charlie Miller," she continued, "I've seen how he looks at you at every event. Remember that conversation we had after the Christmas party? The mistletoe thing?" Oliver nodded, his memory flashing to Charlie's lingering stares. "He's had his eye on you for ages," she said. "It's like he's magnetized to your chest." You must have noticed. He's already been divorced twice. Ever wonder why? She leaned forward. Here's what you don't know, she said. What I think about all this. You keep talking to him, even knowing how he acts. It makes me wonder, are you trying to humiliate me in front of everyone? She tried to interrupt, but Oliver held up his hand. Just let me finish, he said firmly. Do you really believe someone like him would keep your private life quiet? He'd be the type to post every detail online for the world to read. Once Oliver started, the words wouldn't stop. If you ever slept with Charlie Miller, that would be the worst kind of betrayal, he said, his voice low. I might not actually shoot you, but our marriage? It would be finished. He paused to catch his breath, then added sarcastically, Thanks for the advice. Really helpful. Barbara stood up and patted his arm gently before placing a soft kiss on his cheek. I'm going to bed. You coming? In a bit, Oliver replied. Just want to finish this chapter. She turned and asked, What's got you so glued to that book these days? It's fascinating, he said, lighting up a little. This chapter explains why some early traders preferred using mules instead of oxen to pull their wagons. Barbara offered a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Now I understand. Good night, dear. Oliver caught the subtle eye roll as she left the room. Not everyone shared his passion for historical logistics. Still, he wasn't particularly bothered. What did nag at him was a realization that he'd allowed himself to get pulled into yet another one of Barbara's complex conversations. He knew her patterns far too well by now. It reminded him of that vacation years ago. He had told her to pack light, one suitcase, he said. And when it came time to leave, she and the kids showed up grinning like bandits, dragging along an enormous antique Saratoga trunk that had once belonged to her grandmother. The thing barely fit in their SUV. I could have sworn the car dipped under the weight of that massive trunk. That was my fault. I should have been more specific when I said just one suitcase. For the entire trip, I sat with my knees crammed against a compact travel bag, silently accepting my punishment. The next day passed as normal. We both went about our usual routines, and by the evening, we were back to our favorite habit, relaxing in our cushy armchairs, side by side, each buried in a book. It might seem mundane to some, but to us, it was a sacred kind of silence, one we protected even when our kids were young. They learned early that reading time meant do not disturb. Just as I was concluding that mules had likely been the superior choice for wagon pulling, Barbara quietly placed her book on my lap. Honey, she said, I'd like to circle back to the conversation we had yesterday. I wasn't surprised in the least. As I'd suspected, that conversation had only paused. It was never finished. How would you feel, she continued, if I told you I wanted to have an affair with a woman? Someone like Tracy Wilson? I snapped my book shut. My deep dive into 19th century livestock logistics could wait. She had my full attention now. So you're saying this to me directly? No secrets? No sneaking around? Exactly, she replied, locking eyes with me. Full transparency. You'd know everything ahead of time. Who knows? Maybe you'd even join in. That last bit made my pulse skip. I waited for her to confirm, and she did. Yes, she said. In hindsight, I probably should have realized I was stepping into a trap. But clearly, Barbara had never met Tracy Wilson. My mind wandered into a very specific and admittedly indecent fantasy. A possible threesome with my wife and Tracy. Now don't rush to judge me. I'm just being honest. I'm still a man after all. Okay, I'll admit it. If something like that ever really happened, I'd probably keel over from the shock. But the idea? Well, the idea was something. Really, Oliver? Barbara replied, raising an eyebrow. Same kind of situation as with Ben and Charlie, huh? This time, I didn't need nearly as long to gather my thoughts. I wasn't completely certain how upset I'd be. It really depended on the role I played. My answer came with a hint of pride and maybe a tiny bit of hope. Barbara, as I rolled this time, was theatrical. So your concept of loyalty depends on how personally threatened you feel? She said sharply. Not any deep moral conviction? That one stung. I stayed silent, figuring I'd already said too much. She sat there watching me, her foot tapping against the chair leg like a metronome, waiting for me to say something, anything. Finally, I faced the real issue head on. "Barbara, why are you so hung up on having an affair with that snake Miller?" She sighed. "Look, yes, Charlie's a sleaze, but not for the reasons you think." It took me a few seconds to grasp what she was implying. You probably would have caught on faster, but my mind was still stuck on Tracy. I just sat there, stunned, silent. Eventually, Barbara offered me some mercy and clarity. "This isn't about romance," she said. "This would be part of my academic work. I think it could give me valuable data for my sexuality research." My mouth went dry. My head felt light. "Come on, sweetheart. Let's be honest. This isn't about morality for you. It's about your ego. And let's be real. Charlie is no more a threat to us than Ben or Tracy. This is going to happen whether you approve or not. Next weekend, I'll be with Charlie. From Friday to Sunday. I'll be back Sunday evening. It's one weekend. It changes nothing between us." She spoke slowly, like she was explaining bedtime rules to a stubborn child. "Thomas, you're not leaving me over this," she said, almost amused. "This is just a weekend. For research, things will go back to normal when I return. Maybe I'll even humor you with that mule and oxen analogy you love so much." I kept my voice level. "Calm. Barbara, I don't own you. I can't physically stop you. But if you go through with this, you need to know it will change something. Something fundamental. I don't know what exactly, but it will leave a mark on you, on me, on us." I paused. "You're right. I wouldn't shoot anybody. But whether our marriage survives that, I can't promise." I tried steering the conversation toward logic. "Think about how this will look to your coworkers." But I regretted saying at the moment it left my lips. Something told me most of her colleagues had probably already had their turn with Charlie. So I shifted gears again. "Barbara, remember the story I once told you? That party story? The woman speaking with a suave stranger at a fancy event. She looked at me, not answering. He says to her, 'Madam, would you sleep with me for $1 million?' She's shocked, but eventually says, 'Yes, I think I would.' Then he follows up, 'What about $10?' She gets angry and says, 'Absolutely not. What kind of woman do you think I am?' And he says, 'Well, we've already established what you are. Now we're just negotiating the price.' I stood behind her, raising my voice slightly. 'Barbara, if you keep going down this road, eventually everyone will see you for who you really are.' I paused, then added more quietly, 'That's all I'm going to say. Do what you believe is right.' After that, I made a decision. I wasn't going to bring it up again, and I didn't. Still, the air in the house stayed thick with tension all week. She never revisited the topic either. That in itself was telling. Then Friday arrived. 'Well, darling, I'm off to Charlie's.' 'Don't worry. We'll be fine,' she said with that tone that implied she was trying to reassure herself as much as me. 'And what will you be doing while I'm away?' she asked with a sly grin. 'Maybe play with your model trains in the basement?' She kissed me on the cheek and reached for the door. Just as it closed, I called out casually, 'Don't worry about me. I'll probably be spending some quality time with Madison Garcia.' Now, Madison was the only woman I knew who had a larger bust than Barbara, and she flirted with me more than once, right in front of her. I buried my face in the newspaper, pretending to be engrossed in a headline. Yes, some of us still read actual printed papers. A moment later, the front door creaked open. I looked up to see Barbara standing there, staring at me like I'd just declared war. 'You wouldn't dare,' she said. I gave her a quiet smirk, folded the paper, and returned her gaze without a word. She didn't argue. Instead, she slowly removed her sweater and walked toward the bedroom. As she passed me, she paused. 'You know,' she said flatly, 'her boobs aren't even real.' Then, without another word, she walked into the bedroom and began unpacking as though nothing had happened. The whole thing reminded me of that old story about the farmer and the talking mule. A carnival owner wanted proof the mule could speak. The mule said a few words, and the man eagerly paid for it. A few weeks later, the mule stopped talking. No tricks worked. The owner came back furious. Without saying a word, the farmer picked up a big stick and cracked the mule across the head. The mule immediately started talking again. The farmer shrugged and said, "Sometimes you've got to get his attention first." With that old tale floating around in my head, I turned the page to the sports section and checked the game scores.